When the late President of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, after years of negotiation, had to sign the newly developed constitution of the country in 1996, he had not forgotten the South African War of 1899 to 1902. He insisted that the signing ceremony had to take place in the town of Vereeniging. During this event, he remarked, "Today, together as South Africans from all walks of life and from virtually every school of political thought, we reclaim the unity that Vereeniging of 9 decades ago sought to deny." Here Mandela referred to representatives of Britain and the former Boer republics of the Transvaal and Free State who negotiated the peace treaty of Vereeniging in 1902 in order to end the South African War, a treaty that denied black South Africans political rights in their land of birth. By referring to this incident, Mandela not only acknowledged the crucial importance of the South African War in the history of the country, but also its immense impact on the socio-political development of South Africa. In this documentary, an overview will be provided of how the only museum in the world dedicated specifically to the remembrance of this war negotiated the challenge of reclaiming unity amongst South Africans by promoting social cohesion, national healing, and nation building. Not long after the signing of the Treaty of Vereeniging, M.T. Steyn, former president of the Orange Free State Republic, initiated the forming of a working committee to establish a monument to commemorate the unforeseen death of more than 30,000 Afrikaner women and children in disease-ridden concentration or internment camps set up by the British military during the South African War. Boer families were forcefully removed from their farms and interned in these camps. Despite immense poverty being experienced, collection lists were distributed amongst members of the Afrikaner community to raise funds for such a monument. A proposal for the project by architect Frans Soff and sculptor Anton van Wouw was accepted by the Working Committee in 1911. The City Council of Bloemfontein donated a plot of about 20 hectares on the outskirts of the city for the erection of the monument. The inauguration of the monument took place in 1913. About 20,000 people attended the unveiling of the group of sculptures and side panels. The National Women's Memorial Commission was then formed to maintain, manage and secure this monument. Soon after its inauguration, members of the Afrikaner community spontaneously started to donate objects related to the war to the Women's Memorial Commission. As a result, it was decided to establish a war museum adjacent to the Women's Memorial to exhibit and preserve these items to remind future generations of the struggle and suffering of the Afrikaner nation. Ben van Rensburg, a journalist at a local newspaper and member of the Women's Memorial Commission, was then appointed as part-time supervisor of the new museum in 1929. The official opening of the War Museum took place in 1931. By 1933, about 15,000 people had already visited the museum. However, the museum could not generate the necessary income to sustain itself. Therefore, the ownership of the War Museum, unlike that of the Women's Memorial, was transferred to the state in 1934, with the Women's Memorial Commission reserving limited oversight of the facility by means of the part-time involvement of van Rensburg. Due to further financial difficulties being experienced, the Women's Memorial Commission eventually also relinquished its supervisory role, and the museum became a fully-fledged state-owned institution in 1953. Van Rensburg was consequently appointed as the first full-time director of the museum. The need for more storage, exhibition and office space became apparent. As a result, the War Museum was converted into a double-story building in 1957, while a northwestern wing was also added in 1972, followed by an administrative annex and auditorium in 1978. Karel Pienaar, a former history teacher at Grey College in Bloemfontein, took over as director of the museum in 1968. In line with exclusive sentiments, the Council of the Museum changed the name of the institution in 1974 from War Museum to War Museum of the Boer Republics. Piet Delport, an existing employee of the museum, was appointed as new director in 1978. He was succeeded in 1991 by Frik Jacobs, a former teacher and staff member of the Department of Defence. Jacobs took over the reins when immense uncertainty emerged about the future of the museum as an Afrikaner institution amidst the establishment of a new political dispensation in South Africa under an ANC-led government in 1994. It has to be acknowledged that sentiments attributed to both the Women's Memorial and War Museum of the Boer Republics were indeed used earlier by politicians to rekindle Afrikaner nationalism. Therefore, it is understandable that many role players in the new political dispensation would view such memorials and museums with distrust and even hostility. At the retirement of Jacobs in early 2009, it was already evident that new and dynamic leadership would be required in the next decade to negotiate the daunting challenges that threatened the future existence of a museum, which many in the new South Africa associated with Afrikaner nationalism and apartheid. Toki Pretorius was appointed as 5th director of the museum in March 2009. He obtained BProc LLB and LLM degrees from the University of the Free State in Bloemfontein. During his studies, he was also awarded academic honorary colours, the Dean's Medal for the Best LLM Student, and the Jutta Prize for the Best Law Student at the university. Toki, an admitted attorney, previously worked in the corporate sector and was also a member of the War Museum's Audit Committee from 2004 to 2008. Under the leadership of its new director, the War Museum strategically repositioned itself as a museum for all South Africans.
To say that the strategic repositioning of the War Museum was a daunting task in the early years of my term in office is an understatement. On the one hand, I was discredited as a sellout by some conservative Afrikaners, while on the other hand, I also had to deal with the hostility of some stakeholders in the new political dispensation who saw no place for such an exclusive Afrikaner museum in the new South Africa. But I firmly believe that the rightful and long overdue acknowledgement and depiction of the role and suffering of black South Africans in the war would promote social cohesion, nation healing and nation building amongst all the people of our country.
Through the years, most South Africans in both the white and black communities believed that the South African War was a white man's war only, not being aware that about 12,000 agterryers, or black farm workers, accompanied the Boers on commando as attendants, that approximately 110,000 black men were employed in combatant and non-combatant roles by the British Army, and that more than 20,000 black women and children also died in the internment or labour camps set up by the British military. By expanding the narrative of the war to also include the participation, suffering and death of thousands of black South Africans, the museum today propagates an inclusive and more balanced interpretation of the war and its consequences, without discarding Afrikaner history in the process. With its newfound contemporary and universal message of denouncing war and human suffering as a consequence thereof, the War Museum now also aspires to promote international reconciliation between former adversaries in the war. The museum's initial Sol Plaatjie exhibition hall was established in 2010 to provide a chronological overview of the involvement and role of black South Africans during the war. This was followed by the erection of the agterryer statue in 2013 to commemorate the contribution of about 12,000 farm workers who served as attendants to members of the Boer forces during the war. A larger and more modern Sol Plaatjie Hall was built in 2015, allowing for a more extensive and detailed depiction of the involvement of black South Africans in the war. The first memorial on the grounds of the museum to commemorate both white and black women and children who suffered and died in the concentration or internment camps was erected in 2010. A children's museum and educational centre was also established in 2010. Here, exhibits related to children in the war and educational programs for the youth were presented. A memorial dedicated to the women and children confounded in the Batuli camp, which was described by some as a camp from hell, was likewise unveiled in 2010. This was followed in 2010 by the adding of a generic scale model of a typical white camp to the exhibits inside the museum. An authentic scale model based on archaeological excavations at the camp for black civilians at Dryharts near Kimberley can currently also be viewed in the museum. In 2013, women of all ages and races participated in a Women's Day wreath-laying ceremony at the Women's Memorial, a first in the history of this monument. A garden of remembrance reflecting the documented names of about 36,000 white and black women and children who perished in the camps was established in 2015. This was followed in 2020 by the building of a children's labyrinth, which focuses on the experiences of children during the war. In recent years, the museum also transcends the historical suffering of the South African War by raising awareness about the unacceptably high levels of violence against women and children experienced in present-day South Africa. A building used as a British garrison hospital during the war was re-erected in 2010 on the grounds of the museum to depict the extent of medical care during the war period. In addition, a symbolic British graveyard with authentic memorials and crosses dating from the war was laid out in 2015 in collaboration with the Commonwealth War Graves Commission to honour about 22,000 British soldiers who lost their lives in the war. 2015 also saw the completion of the Lord Roberts Hall inside the museum, where exhibits portray the role of British soldiers during the war. Furthermore, a residence that had been used as headquarters by General Leslie Rundle in Harry Smith was relocated to the grounds of the museum in 2021-2022. Amongst others, an operational room depicting British war actions in the Eastern Free State and Natal, as well as the General's sleeping quarters, can be viewed here. The War Museum unveiled a Wall of Remembrance in 2012 to commemorate members of the Boer forces, also known as burghers, who were killed during the hostilities. This memorial includes the documented names of 4,350 burghers who lost their lives. The Louis Botha Hall inside the museum was introduced in 2015 to portray the lives of burghers on commando. A diorama depicting the Free State Artillery Unit in action was added in 2015. The Paardeberg Museum, a neglected small building on the site of the Paardeberg battlefield, was also relocated in 2019 to ensure the conservation thereof. In 2021, a statue of the former president of the Orange Free State Republic, M.T. Steyn, was relocated to the grounds of the museum acknowledging in the process his rightful place in history as a peacemaker, negotiator, and advocate for the rights of women and children. Through continuous engagement such as educational and outreach programs, interesting temporary exhibits, community events, etc., the War Museum builds its reputation as being a relevant, contemporary and living museum in the real sense of the word. Since 2009, educational and outreach initiatives have been aimed at school learners, students at various tertiary institutions, the elderly and various other interest groups. Furthermore, the War Museum contributes to celebrating national days by presenting relevant exhibitions and events. The national and international stature of the War Museum as a credible institution facilitating national and international scholarly research associated with the war grew immensely since 2009. Information systems and databases have been expanded since 2009 to include the digitizing of more than 38,000 images related to photographic material and documents, which can also be accessed via the museum's website. In addition, the more than 15 award-winning books and journals published by the War Museum since 2009 also contribute significantly to expanding the historiography of the war. Between 2010 and 2022, the museum has produced 15 groundbreaking documentary videos on various topics related to the war. These include the first ever comprehensive documentary on the involvement of Black South Africans in the war and the first ever documentary on the war in an indigenous African language. The War Museum hosts international conferences from time to time. For example, as part of its 120-year commemoration of the start of the war, the museum presented an international conference with the theme New Perspectives on the War in 2019. This conference was attended by about 200 delegates from a variety of countries such as South Africa, the United Kingdom, Russia, Turkey, France, Canada, Australia, and the United States of America. Presentations of a diverse nature were delivered by no less than 55 local and international speakers during the 3-day event. More such international conferences in the near future are being planned. Numerous agreements, partnerships and memorandums of understanding with international heritage and academic institutions are being concluded. This includes, for example, the Rijksmuseum in the Netherlands and the Leeds Beckett University in Britain, amongst others. The museum also received an international TripAdvisor award due to its popularity as a tourist attraction in South Africa. In 2014, the University of the Free State in Bloemfontein awarded its Chancellor's Medal to the director of the War Museum in recognition of the role that he and the museum play in national reconciliation, education and tourism development. Since the South African War can be regarded as a liberation struggle against imperialism, the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture recently classified the War Museum as a liberation flagship museum in South Africa, alongside other heritage institutions like Robben Island and Freedom Park. Today, the conservation of more than 60,000 objects in the collections of the War Museum ensures the preservation of the culture, historical heritage and legacy of the South African War for current and future generations of all the people of South Africa.
I want to thank the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, the chairpersons and members of various museum councils for the years, and also my staff for their support and contributions in transforming the War Museum into a catalyst for social cohesion, nation healing and nation building in our country.
The War Museum, as a former stronghold of exclusive Afrikaner nationalism, is committed to not only maintaining its current status as a truly inclusive South African museum, but also to excel at providing a platform for reclaiming unity, once denied, as envisaged by the late Nelson Mandela.